Welcome back to the podcast. I know that if you are listening to this live, you are probably dealing with a lot of holiday parties and a lot of events that are coming up. So I wanted to just do a podcast episode, kind of diving into the ways that you can strategize your routine and what you should be focused on versus stressing over the holiday party. This is a question that I get a lot, and this is something that comes up very frequently in terms of how do I stay on track? How do I not go overboard? How do I make sure that I don't lose all of my progress by going to these things, and the guilt that's associated with going to holiday parties, as well as just enjoying the holiday season. And I know that this is just a very common pain point. So I wanted to not only answer some of your common questions, but to also kind of dive into the strategy you should be focusing on and what you need to be doing as you're going into these holiday parties and just the rest of this month so that you don't go into January feeling guilty and like you have to completely start over, or that you're constantly starting over every single week. So let's dive into it. And this episode's really going to center around your mindset. In the previous episode, we talked about building your identity and why that's important for you to have the identity shift into who you want to become and how you're going to get the results that you want. If you're not believing the things that you tell yourself right now, or if you're telling yourself a narrative that isn't necessarily either something you can resonate with, that feels true to you, or that you can constantly tell yourself the same story, then you're going to find that you're not going to be able to be consistent. And consistency and being able to live in that narrative now is what's going to actually help you be successful, not the one-offs. And the holiday parties are truly the one-offs. If you are having a holiday party on a Saturday and you have maybe 4 of them coming up for this month, 4 times of going out and being off track is not going to ruin your progress. What's going to ruin your progress is your mindset around the holiday party and the screw up mentality that you've been telling yourself is okay to have, or that you kind of fall into after you go to the holiday party, after you overindulge, or after you are maybe off track a little bit. And I see this very frequently when it comes to being consistent and feeling like you can be consistent for a short period of time, then it gets overwhelming and you burn yourself out because it's either too restrictive or you're dealing with something that you didn't strategize enough for or plan enough for. And I think that both are very important to understand because you can have a good plan in place and you're not consistent with it. And you need to ask yourself, is it because it's the plan? Is it because I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing and where I need to be structured? Or is it because I don't have a good identity with it? And you can have a very good plan that will deliver you results. And I would say a majority of plans will give you results depending on the ability to do it long term. And the important thing to remember here is you need to have a concept and an understanding as you're going into these parties, as you're going into these events, and as you are kind of trying to be consistent, that you understand the discipline, the sacrifice, but also the plan itself so that you can plan ahead and be consistent. I will always tell you that most plans will deliver results if they are focused on 3 core things: a bigger strategy that's going to allow you to grow and intensify over time, structure that is designed around a lifestyle that's going to work for you and that is also structured around the goal and the outcome that you want, and consistency and the ability to be consistent through planning. You need to have a good plan and a good understanding of what you need to focus on, why you need to focus on these things, and how it plays into the bigger strategy and the bigger structure of your overall plan. Because if these are areas are not either clear or they are not attainable in the sense that you either don't identify with the narrative that you're telling yourself, you don't identify with the person that you want to be, or you're just not at a point with your lifestyle that you're being consistent at all, and you're jumping from point A to point B that might be just a little bit too much for you at this point in time. So you have to make sure that all of these areas work together so that they mesh together, they don't resist. And if there's too much resistance, that causes you to fall off track, and that's where a lot of plans fall short when it comes to holiday parties or vacations, or just feeling like you can't be off track even one day or one evening. And then you build this mentality and this mindset that you have to either be on or off. And when you're off, you just go all in and you go overboard and you indulge in things that you wouldn't necessarily because you're afraid you're never going to be able to enjoy it again. And that you know that when you get back on track, you're supposed to avoid these things. And this resistance and this avoidance mentality actually builds more of a negative relationship with fitness and nutrition than building it into your life. So I'm very much on the balance spectrum when it comes to your plan because it's so important that you have something that you're viewing as a lifestyle and that you're viewing as something that's going to get you the outcome that you want. That's a long-term outcome, not a 30-day outcome. If we're only looking at a 30-day window and it's so overly restrictive that you can't stick to it past those 30 days, it's not realistic for you. And it's not something that's going to be realistic in terms of going to a holiday party or having a dinner party, and it's going to make you fall off track. And when you do so, and if you already are in a place where you find that you do fall off track in these events, and then you go overboard for days on end, you're not going to see the results you want. You're going to constantly be in this on-off cycle. It's going to be really hard for you to see results. So what can you do instead? And how do you apply this to your routine? First, the thing you need to do instead is understand why you have this mentality around fitness and nutrition and all or nothing mindset. And it's very common. So if this is something you're struggling with, know that a lot of women deal with this, and this is something that I coach on very regularly. But the first thing you need to do is fix your mentality around this. And that's easier said than done because you need to understand where it's kind of stemming from or where you've built these relationships with it and how you can get out of this mentality and into a place that's going to allow you to have balance and allow you to have freedom. This is probably one of the biggest testimonials I get through coaching because I'm so passionate about this topic and making sure that you get a lifestyle that you feel balanced with and that you feel like you can do no matter what. Does not mean that there will not be sacrifice sometimes. That does not mean it won't be challenging. But what that means is we're building a lifestyle for you so that you can be consistent with this, that you can be in a place where you're going to be able to do this plan 12 months out of the year. You're going to be able to still go on vacations. You're going to be able to go on date nights, and you're going to feel like you have much more balance and more results because you're not focused on how can I enjoy these things as much as I possibly can right now because I know that come Monday I'm going to need to eliminate them from my diet again, and then building this craving mentality around foods because you can't have them, and that builds a very negative relationship not only with food but fitness and nutrition itself, and it makes you kind of resent the activities you have to do, the workouts you have to do, and resent nutrition and eating healthy because now you're in a state where it's something that you have to do and something that you do only because you want results. And when the results don't follow, it builds a very negative relationship. And it even causes you to go off track more frequently. Might be why you're kind of spinning your wheels and constantly in this cycle. So you have to figure out where that's coming from, where the history is with that. But then how can we build this around a lifestyle that's going to work for you realistically, that works for your life right now? If you're a nurse that's working night shifts and you have 12-hour shifts and you're not going to the gym right now and you're trying to eat healthy, but you're always finding yourself going to the vending machine and you just don't have a good relationship with your nutrition and a good consistent routine with your training, we're not going to give you a plan that's going to cause you to have to be meal prepping 2 to 3 hours a week. That's going to make you have to work out on the days that you have really long shifts and go work out either before or after your shift. We're going to be looking at how can we build something consistent that's going to work with your schedule for work, that's going to allow you to have either home workouts or workouts that are going to allow you to just be consistent 2 to 3 times a week, a bigger step goal that we're looking at on a weekly average, and then cleaning up your nutrition in a way that is realistic and sustainable for you and not just saying, hey, when you're hungry and you need to go to the vending machine, just don't do it. Like, that's just not realistic for you, and you're not going to be able to do that a majority of the time. We're going to be teaching you lifestyle skills around your nutrition, how you can utilize time to be making better choices, what your nutrition needs to look like, what we're going to be aiming for in certain capacities, as well as limits for your nutrition, and where it needs to be broken down, but in a way that feels realistic for you, so that when you have to make a choice at a vending machine or if you're at like the cafeteria and you don't have a lot available to you, we're breaking down the lifestyle pattern so that you know what to be looking for, you know what to be eating, so that you can maintain your energy, but that you can also stay fuller longer and hit your nutrition goals. And then we're looking at the strategy of your planning and your training outside of that and how it fits into your life, not the other way around. If it's something that's too unrealistic for your lifestyle right now, and I say this lightly because too unrealistic is not necessarily hard. If it's hard and it fits in your lifestyle, that still is doable. If it is something that's just unrealistic and it's something that's going to fit in because you work 6-7 days a week and you can't be working out every single day, that's okay. I don't think you have to be working out that much in order to see results. You need structure, you need consistency, and you need an overall goal that is tied to a strategy and the structure that's going to work for you. If you have none of that and you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, you're not going to get the results you want. And why would you? And it's the same thing as when you're going to events or you have holiday parties or you have things that are going to just be naturally off track for you. You have to look at these as things as maybe you can't control fully, but you can control certain things outside of them. So what do I mean by this? If you look at the event and it's something that's going to completely derail your week, and we're talking one meal, one night out of 7 days, that is something that is obviously a mentality issue or something that's a bad relationship with food or not really being able to see the consistency aspect because you don't have a good plan that's setting you up for success. A few things that I see with this mentality is either completely skipping meals all day long before you go into the event to save up calories so that you can enjoy yourself. This generally leads to overeating or overindulging because now you're super hungry. You're going in with a low blood sugar. You're going in with absolutely insane hunger levels, and you haven't prioritized anything throughout the day. Now you're there, and it's going to be obviously an emotional decision, especially if you're hungry, where it's just going to be like, screw it, it's just one night. And because I know that tomorrow I'm not going to be eating these things, I might as well have two, or I might as well have three. And then it just kind of builds from there versus having a more healthy approach to it where it's one meal. You can enjoy one meal the same way that you would enjoy a meal at home or that you could control, and look at the things that you can control about it. If you have no control over the foods that you're going to be having, you have no idea what's on the menu, you can't break it down or do an a la carte style, then what we should be looking at as what you can control is the things earlier in the day. How can you hit your protein goal before even getting to the event? Can you make sure your meals are broken down into more fiber and more protein-based meals that are going to help you hit those lower calorie, higher protein goals? And then leaving your carbs and your fats for maybe that special meal that you're going to be having later in the day. Or can you just eat normally, not worry about the event, but just make sure before going into the event, you're not going into it hungry. We're not skipping meals. And we're actually potentially even having a high protein stack before we go into them so that we're not overly ravenous and making decisions that we potentially wouldn't have if we weren't as hungry. It puts us in more of a stable decision-making mode, but it also is something that we control the areas and the facets of our morning and our afternoon before getting there instead of letting it derail our entire progress. You also have to remember when it comes to events or one meal or one special occasion that in order for you to actually gain 1 pound of fat, you have to be eating 3,500 calories over your maintenance level calories right now. So if you're already in a deficit and you are truly hitting that deficit number every single day, if you were to have one meal out, you would have to eat outside of that deficit, but then you would also have to eat an additional 3,500 calories on top of your maintenance in order to actually gain 1 pound of fat. So even if the scale is fluctuating maybe 2 to 5 pounds, which is very normal on a daily basis, that does not mean that number is solely coming from fat. Your scale and the number on the scale is really determining a body composition number that comes with water retention, that comes with muscle mass, fat mass, and it comes with so many more factors. It makes up everything in your body from your hair, your skin, and your nails to your fat mass and your muscle mass. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you've gained fat, but it could mean that you're holding on to more water weight and now your scale has fluctuated slightly and it's something that's going to be potentially go back down. But it's not necessarily a correlation to fat. So one meal isn't making you gain fat, but it is potentially making you retain more water. And that's totally normal when you're eating outside of your normal meal plan or when there's something a little bit off. It's very normal if you're adding alcohol, you're adding things that are dehydrating, you're sleeping less, or you're even adding more salty foods or sweet foods that are going to cause your digestion to retain more water. Or maybe you're eating a little bit more carbs, which are going to hold on to a little bit more water. It's all going to make the scale fluctuate. But it does not mean that you are gaining fat. It just means that you are potentially holding on to a little bit more water weight at the moment and it will go back down. Where this gets tricky and where this actually gets to a point where you could definitely be going outside of your deficit, you could either be getting into maintenance where you're not going to be seeing progress or even getting into a surplus and gaining weight is when you get into that mentality of all or nothing or the screw up mentality and you go overboard. I see this very frequently when people are very consistent Monday through maybe Wednesday or Thursday, and then they have something that comes up on Thursday, and then Friday they have an event, and then Saturday and Sunday they spend the entire weekend out, and they're not tracking anything. They're adding drinks, they're adding desserts. We are now expanding the window of where we might be off track to almost more than half a week. And if you're doing it Thursday through Sunday on a consistent basis, we are more than half a week. And we are at a point now where you are not going to be seeing results because your consistency is missing the mark. And that's going to hold you back from actually seeing results because now you might be in that window of eating over 3,500 calories per week outside of your maintenance or even more than that, which is going to put you in a place of potentially gaining weight or just sticking in maintenance and not seeing progress. I will tell you that this is one of the most common things that we all do. We want to see the efforts from our hard work, and we don't want to necessarily bring to light the things that are in our control that we aren't controlling and that are potentially the reason of us not seeing success. Nobody wants to fail at anything. And it can be very hard if you don't have a good humility or a good relationship with your accountability and what your structure looks like each week, and you're guessing. And sometimes this is more subconscious than it is something that you do on purpose, because it is something that you'll say, I know I meal prepped. I was eating my meals Monday through Thursday. I was really good. I didn't have any drinks. Why am I not seeing progress? And we forget about the fun activities, because those are the things that we didn't necessarily track. We don't actually have the thing in front of our face telling us that we messed up or we failed. And it's not something that a lot of people look at. Maybe if you go back and recount it and really look at the data, you might be able to analyze that, but most people won't. They will look at the things that they did well, not the things that they didn't do well. And when that happens, then it starts to feel like I'm doing everything perfectly and I'm really consistent, but I'm not seeing results. So the plan must be the problem. And now I need to move to the next plan. And in reality, consistency is the problem, but you're lacking that structure, you're lacking that strategy, and you're lacking that overall adherence because it doesn't fit your lifestyle, because it's too restrictive, and because of your mentality. So we have to fix that first in order for you to move to the next step. Otherwise, you consistently will go into the cycle of on and off track. And when you get in that mentality, it can easily cause you to go over way more than you would, or overindulge. And that can just lead to a really bad cycle. I want to give you a few different ways that you can use this as you're going to maybe holiday parties in the next couple of weeks, and even just carrying it through for vacations or events that you might have, and how you can have a better structure with this so that you're not constantly getting into that all or nothing mindset, and the things that you shouldn't be doing so that you can make sure that this doesn't happen to you. I would not recommend that you starve yourself all day long and use it as a way to overindulge later, or as a way to make sure that you can earn your food later by not eating in the afternoon or in the morning. That's just going to make you more hungry. That's going to make your cortisol and your blood sugar rise. And it's just going to cause a more emotional decision at the point where you get to actually make the choice of what you're going to be eating. It might cause you to drink more, eat more, and just make decisions that you naturally wouldn't if you were in a better mental state. So I would not recommend that. I would also not recommend that you go in anxious or starving. If you're overwhelmed about the decisions around food or feeling guilty, it's going to make you make poor decisions and use it as an excuse to indulge now and then get back on track later, or use guilt to be more restrictive later. And it's just not a good mentality to have. Overeating because, of course, you're human and you're now hungry. And I would not do anything overly restrictive the next day if you feel like you overindulged, or if you did make decisions that maybe you weren't very proud of, whether that was having a couple extra drinks or having an extra dessert or even an extra serving. I would not change the plan or get more restrictive or add in more things that are going to make you as almost like a guilt trip to get back on track. I would really just focus on getting back on track and making sure that you are eating your protein, you're eating your vegetables, you're drinking your water, and you're getting movement in. I wouldn't do anything crazy, because that just gets you back into that restrictive mentality that then prevents you from moving forward and away from overindulging when you have the opportunity. And if this is truly something that you feel like you struggle with, and whether it's guilt or whether it is not really knowing what you're doing when you go into these parties, I want you to figure out first where you feel like this is stemming from. Is this something from a previous diet plan you had? Is this something from a past experience? Did you ever have a point in time where you were on a plan and that you went out and you had one dinner and maybe you gained 10 pounds? What is the reality of where this fear is stemming from? And is it something that is rational? Is it something that is irrational? Or is it something that potentially has some emotion tied to it? And how can you understand where it's kind of stemming from so that you can move forward from it? And a lot of times it's just from a lack of knowledge, or it's coming from maybe fear mongering online. And where I've seen this come from a lot is maybe like the diet culture of eating as little as possible, making sure that you're eating as little as you possibly can leading into an event. And then feeling like you're going overboard is causing you to go off track. So then you get really restrictive. And what you really need to understand is the bigger picture of your plan. If you cannot pinpoint your consistency with your nutrition, if you cannot pinpoint your consistency with your training, and you can't pinpoint your consistency with your daily activity on a weekly basis, you don't have a real plan. You do not have something that you are actually tracking that is going to get you results. And especially if you do not have the results that you want and you struggle getting the results you want, it is because of the plan that you have and the lack of consistency, the lack of structure, and the lack of strategy that is preventing you from actually seeing results and still enjoying yourself and having that balance. Because once you're able to kind of fix that and you have a good understanding of what to be focusing on, and you can actually look at your adherence and your consistency week over week, and progress is still happening, this relationship where it's fearful of nutrition, fearful of events, fearful of missing out on your routine or getting off track kind of goes away because you know that one meal, one day, and even one week really doesn't affect your progress that much. And you understand how hard it is to actually get the results you want and what that structure and strategy has to look like in order to do that. Muscle mass takes a really long time in order to build, and it's not something that you can just go do a couple random exercises, do hours of cardio, and eat little to nothing and build and gain. But once you start to build that and you understand that it comes from proper nutrition that is actually specific to you, as well as to enough protein and calories based on your goal, and is also structured in the intensity and the progression of your workout plan, and it is tied to your adherence to nutrition. Once you understand those things and you see the results and the impact of them, it's easier for you to understand how these results happen, and less fear comes from around one event or a vacation or something that's going to keep you off track because you understand how it was built, you understand the length at which it took to build it, and you understand the impact of decisions that you make, and you're able to build it into more of a lifestyle so that you feel like it fits your lifestyle and you feel like you have more balance. Those are crucial in order for you to get from where you're at right now of that on-off cycle and feeling guilty when you're going to events or feeling overwhelmed as you go into events and guilty as you leave, and getting more into what your structure needs to look like, what your adherence needs to look like, and how you can build these things into your lifestyle without them actually affecting your results and your progress. And I promise you it's life-changing. So I hope that was helpful in understanding a little bit about how you're going to kind of reframe your mentality around these events and how you need to get out of the screw it mentality or the on and off cycle and getting a little bit more consistent. If you're struggling with this and you need some support in terms of building out your plan, the transformation road or identifying where you're struggling and why you're not seeing results, the transformation roadmap is linked in the show notes down below. This is one of my favorite tools, and it gives you a lot of insight into how to diagnose your actual issue and what you're dealing with, why you're not seeing results, and where to go from there. And it helps you identify where your pain point is of why you're not seeing results, regardless if you're eating clean, if you're training consistently, or what that may look like for you. And it helps you kind of get a better understanding of where that's coming from. And then, and that's probably where I would point you next if you haven't downloaded that yet, because that is just going to give you a good understanding and a good basis of where to go from here. And if you've already downloaded the transformation roadmap, I have revamped it and I've given more resources inside of it. So it's definitely worth re-downloading again if you are interested in looking at that, or if you haven't solved the problem just yet. It's a great way to kind of get a better understanding of what's causing you to not see results and where you need to focus more of your attention. And like I said, there's more resources and things like that inside of it now. So you can definitely check that out in the show notes down below. I have released January spots. There's very limited January coaching spots, but that is linked down below as well if you want to apply or learn more about what coaching looks like. And then starting January 5th, we have a new challenge that's going to start. I'm so excited for this. This is a 6-week challenge that's going to push you through January. I'm so excited for this challenge. There's going to be a lot that comes with it. So I will put the link to sign up or to learn more information about the challenge down below. There's over $100,000 of cash prizes given away in this challenge, and you can find more information about that in the show notes down below. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast episode, and I will talk to you next week in the next episode.